Now let's start it again. Everybody, welcome to the second episode of I Heard They Stream Live, what is now officially recalled I Heard They Stream Live. Thanks to Woj for the name and the artwork. I am one of your hosts, Damian Abraham, and your other host from now and forever will be Woj. Woj, welcome back to the show, buddy.
What's up? Good to be back.
Well, it was a well-received first episode. I'm going to say divisive, but well received in its divisiveness.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not gonna walk back any of my statements, but I will say, listeners, keep in mind, I'm trying to make it interesting, and maybe I'm exaggerating some of my, thoughts or tastes or opinions for content,
Absolutely. And I feel like lest a guy who has decried Fugazi in the Clash come at anybody for their choices and hot takes. And I feel like this is the safe space to have these kind of hot takes. Is like when you're talking about music, it's like, yeah, man, this is the stuff that we're allowed to disagree on and that's safe to disagree on because this is super fun. And I think you and me, as we've talked about off mic, fit together really well because the stuff that you kind of gravitate towards that I don't like is kind of like perfect, and the stuff that you obviously don't like that I gravitate towards is perfect. So, yeah, I think we're gonna have some good conversations going. Yeah. And we've got some feedback and some guests that we're going to talk about coming up later on in the show. But before we do, I kind of want to start this off by acknowledging the passing of Sasha Jenkins, who's someone who I only met the one time on the podcast when he came on as a guest. I'm not going to pretend like we were super, super tight because I only really spoke to him a few times on text and stuff like that. But he is a hero of mine and someone that I feel like changed certainly my world forever with the stuff that he did. And I will say, for the record, that he made probably the greatest reality TV show ever made. And one of my favorite books on music ever produced. And the companion CD too. And then also like all the hardcore stuff obviously as well, and the graffiti stuff and his connection to so much deep sides of both of it, from like, going to high school with Nas and then eventually doing Mass Appeal with Nas to like taking Danny Diablo to his first show to starting his first band with him way back when to like all the stuff he did beyond that. So rest in peace, Sasha Jenkins. You're a fan, I imagine, Woj, right?
Yeah, I mean, big time. I mean, I'm a big rap magazine nerd, so Ego Trip obviously is legendary. And it is one of the few magazines that had, hip hop as well as, punk leaning music as well, which was really cool. And yeah, I mean, I have a hard time kind of speaking to people about hip hop because I'm kind of a, if you've never heard a Run DMC album, I don't care about your opinion like at all. If you don't know who the Fat Boys are, I don't care what you think about Drake and Kendrick. You know what I mean? Like, and so I really like late 70s and early 80s hip hop, and like you said, the Big Payback soundtrack, that goes along with the Book of Rap lists is so dope, and yeah, he's awesome, man, and he's a good interviewee. I've heard him a lot of interesting interviews with him on podcasts, and he's one of the guys who one interesting thing he said was, as soon as like Mobb Deep came out, he knew he couldn't follow hip hop anymore. He was like, this sounds amazing, this is so good, but I know that from now on it's just going to be this, and it's not what I can. He's like, I'm a grown man, like I can't pretend like I relate to this or that this is cool or whatever. And you rarely ever hear anyone say that. You know, it's really interesting to hear. You know, I forget what interview it was he said that on, but you know, I thought that was really dope to just put that out there. But yeah, rest in peace for sure. He'll be missed.
Yeah, like I was actually always hoping you guys would link up at some point because I think both of you kind of tried to approach the same projects of bridging the worlds of hardcore and hip hop in a tasteful way.
Well, I actually tried out for the white rapper.
That'd be amazing. I love it. There's footage of that. Our friend Chris Ritchie there used to be footage of it on YouTube of him trying out for Fifi Dobson's band.
Oh, really?
And it was like a whole lead up of him walking around all day with the bass guitar. And then he gets up and gets on the mic and plugs in. And it's in like a movie theater in Toronto. They're doing this audition. And he gets up and goes, I don't want to be an American idiot. I don't want to be an American idiot. And Fifi Dobson gets up and goes, am I being punked? At a time when that was still meaning that someone legitimately thought they might have been being punked.
Yeah, yeah.
And that was on YouTube for a long time till Chris Ritchie or Chris Quality insisted on it being taken down. So
I get it. He's in a different space now.
Now it only exists in lore.
Yeah.
But the speaking of things that only exist in lore, I owe an apology to Kevin from Candlebox, apparently, because Andrew Reich, friend of the show, director of the amazing Born Innocent documentary, hit me up promptly after this went up and said he really enjoyed this podcast and live stream. So, Andrew, if you're listening, shout out to you. And he said that he felt that that I was wrong, that he indeed, Kevin, was a deep punk rock head. And brought up some stuff to me, and I extended the invitation to Kevin that if he ever wants to come on the show and talk about any of this stuff, the door is open because I would love to talk about it with him. But he went deep. Some of the stuff he referenced, I was like, damn, okay. I am definitely schooled. Candlebox are punk.
You're welcome.
Yep, I go, thanks, Nick. This is what you're doing for me, opening up some doors.
Yep.
Today on the show, we have a incredible bunch of episodes to talk about, 2 incredible episodes to talk about. And we also have to get to some amazing guests later on. I'm kind of like, I don't want to say until they're on the show because it's our first time ever attempting to have guests on the show with us. But I would describe these guys as like punk rock Hall of Fame level legends to me.
Without a doubt.
It's going to be good. It's going to be good. Well, let's start it off by talking about these 2 episodes. Nick, first, I guess we'll talk about Kurt Bloch, which I know myself, I'm a huge fan of the Fastbacks. And I think from things we've talked about in the past, you're a Fastbacks fan as well.
Yeah, I am. They're a band that I attempted to get into a lot of times, and it took a while to click because when I'm like, oh, you know, I want to listen to something female vocals, which is very often. I love female vocal led bands or even just singer songwriters. And I'm looking for something like poppy, catchy, sugary, or like, you know what I mean? Like, and, the Fastbacks could definitely be described as like power pop, in that realm. But the thing is, they have very like kind of like unconventional songwriting, and it's not super verse chorus hooky. It's there's like it's almost like prog power pop in a way. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like their songs are the songwriting can be pretty intricate, and I'm not one band that has always rubbed me the wrong way is Cheap Trick. And I'm wondering,
man, another you're killing these sacred cows.
Yeah, I don't know. For some reason, I don't know. They just never jibed with me. And I'm realizing that at least Kurt, you know, I think that's one of his favorite bands, and I'm wondering if maybe that comes from Cheap Trick. I don't know, because for some reason just everything about Cheap Trick makes me not want to listen to them, but maybe that's it. But somewhere along the line it clicked, and like I love fastbacks, you know, now for the last, you know, handful of years. So I was pretty excited for this episode.
Yeah, like they were a band that I think I probably got first into them just like as one of those starter pack kind of bands that was like on compilations, like CMJ compilations or something, or
Yeah.
and then it was the movie Hype, and watching them in that film Hype, having kind of been already into all the Epitaph stuff and kind of come through that, the Lookout Records stuff, and being more of like in like hardcore stuff at that point, and seeing them that movie and kind of putting them in the context of like all the grunge stuff that was exploding around them, and then finding out about Duff being in the band and realizing they go back to the first wave of punk, and they're just this band that I think if they had been on Lookout Records, I would have like fallen in love with them because it would have contextualized it a little bit better for me by that point. But like they were always, you know, they're on Sub Pop, which is a great label.
Yeah.
But I think from my narrow perspective as like everything fit into a box in terms of a record label back then, they were just like not. I don't know. That being said, Chicks Dig It were on Sub Pop too, so I feel like them and Chicks Dig It together would have been a great kind of like package.
See, I think that the early fastback stuff you know, fits in with what you're describing, but I think it, you know, after a couple LPs, they get into the territory of what I'm talking about, where it's not so power. It's still poppy. It has that bass, but something about the songwriting, they kind of get very intricate. And, you know, to me, I wouldn't think of Lookout with that sound, but
You're right. Like by that point, they would have been. I don't know. There's still stuff on those records that I think would have fit.
yeah, yeah,
Maybe not Lookout, but like there's. It's interesting how there was, you know, like them and there's a few bands from that kind of era that I think like just like you're saying, like maybe it would have been like Cruise Records a few years earlier, but
mm-hmm.
I don't know. Cruise Records was had a weird vibe. I've got
Yeah.
like a Cruise Records T-shirt that's just like PC with the anti symbol on it.
Yeah. I mean, after you bringing up Cruise Records a couple of times, I like looked at the Discogs, and they don't, it's a pretty short discography. It's not a lot of bands. So it's almost basically like an all label, right? Like, and then there's a couple satellite bands or whatever on it.
But the all guys like Bill's insistent that like yeah like I never like Bill's insistent that like he had no say in it, and it was just like Greg's whim.
Oh, okay.
Kind of throw all those kind of bands together. And it does weirdly have a sound. And I guess we can talk about this with our guest later on too, because I kind of throw them in this kind of world. One of our guests later on, like of these melodic, but yeah, like definitely like not playing Screeching Weasel kind of pop punk, or even Bay Area style pop punk. Like they're playing like a much more kind of like you're saying like evolved. Like they're older,
Yeah.
bands,
Yeah.
right? And it's different than that stuff.
Yeah, and I think the guest that you're referring to, his band might be there. It's like garage rock coming in, whereas Fastbacks, I don't know. I'm hearing like 70s influence here and there in the songwriting, and yeah, there's a couple of different strands of what gets labeled pop punk, right? So you know, think of like when you mentioned pop punk in the interview with
And Gunpowder.
yeah, yeah, you
Whew.
know, you got heat on that.
I got heat on that, and I think it's funny because they were in that interview, like the Peanut Gunpowder interview, they were like denying that it was a thing
Yeah,
prior to Blink 182, and then it became a thing. And I'm like, no, it's always kind of been a thing. Like I feel like it's always been talked about in some way.
sort of. Yeah, I agree. But then if you look at it as in looking at punk from the beginning, right? Like punk started out very rock and roll based and poppy based, the first handful of years. And it really isn't until hardcore or post punk where you either get, that like hardcore monotone, like D beat style, or, like the crass kind of herky jerky vibe. Everything before that was very melodic, because, Aaron Comet Bus, one of his retorts to that was, punk is melodic, and if you think about the impetus of punk, like, yeah, it is, right? Like, so I do understand his take, where he's saying like, now you have to put pop on punk to say that it's melodic when it started off melodic. You know what I mean? So
I don't think I don't think it necessarily started off melodic, right? Like you listen to like Davey and the Cool Marriage Counselors or Electric Eel's Agitate. It's almost like anti-melodic in its approach at times, and I think like the pop punk thing to me are like the last, like going at the same time as Black Flag basically, and the last are very power pop, very kind of like, I guess, Beatles indebted, and Descendants are a huge influence, are influenced by both these bands. So the Descendants are kind of the bridge, I think, between the two.
Yeah, but then like tie that to kind of what Kurt was saying in his interview where, he's like, hey, like the Sonics, I've heard the Sonics, be considered punk and all that. Like even Billy Idol, like he's like, hey, like the first punk to me is like the stuff on Nuggets.
Yeah.
Right. And like that stuff is super poppy. It's like, so
Some of it is, right? But that's the thing is like, I think even there you've got stuff that's like going for something kind of different. And like there's a bridge obviously at different times, like Discharge has melody when you listen to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's also like you compare the Sonics to oh man, I'm trying to think of like a more poppy band from that kind of world. But like, like obviously like a more sunshine pop kind of like 60s psych band.
Mm-hmm.
There's like or early 70s kind of psych band. There's like a real sonic distinction in what they're doing too, even though they're both like making rock and roll. Like I think, I don't know, like, and I don't mean this in a negative way. Like I think when you're making pop punk, you're trying to make punk and thinking about the palatability of these songs. Whereas when you're just like certain types of hardcore, that's definitely the last thing you're thinking about.
Yeah, I guess I also think it's one of those aftermarket terms, like especially like if you think of someone like I don't know, I just think of like if you were to ask Billy Joe, hey, because
He got pissed.
yeah, of course. So to him, he's like, hey man, we were just trying to sound like the Buzzcocks, like. Or like I've heard like LPs say like, hey, like Company Flow, I thought we were just trying to sound like EPMD. You know what I mean? But then our take on it is like, dude, Company Flow is like extremely left field and insanely sounding, but his idea is I was just trying to sound like EPMD, which is crazy. So, you know what I'm saying? So like even like, grunge, like, yeah, grunge makes perfect sense to me. But no one wanted to be called grunge. Shoegaze makes complete sense to me and is codified and stuff now, obviously. But, those guys didn't want to call themselves shoegaze,
No, to me, it all falls under punk. These are all just like offshoots of punk. And these people probably on some level thought they were forming just like, oh yeah, I'm just doing my like post-punk rock band. Like they wouldn't have called it post-punk, obviously. But like, I don't think Jay ever stopped liking hardcore, for instance, from Dinosaur Jr. Like he just stopped playing in a hardcore band.
Yeah.
And went into playing this. And I think that's like a lot of this stuff is just like these people just kind of like stop and go on to do, the next phase, their next kind of band.
Yeah. And I also think though, like the word pop being in the name when punk is basically supposed to be anti-pop. So when someone is accused of making pop punk, it comes off as a pejorative, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah. I can understand why they got offended, but at the same time, like I feel like like they knew they were doing something that was different than Neurosis. Like
Yeah,
it's all
for
under
sure.
punk, right? Like but it's just like what kind of sonic palette or like what geographical influences led to you kind of sounding a certain way at a certain time. And I think that's kind of cool too.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
I think that there is like a locking out era and a locking out band kind of scene. And like there's certainly bands that kind of went outside of this, but that it was like a northeastern kind of thing that happened in Montreal with some bands too, but like
Mhm.
Toronto was like certainly kind of like a little bit on the outside of it with No Warning, I guess. But like the fact that there was like a locking out kind of thing that was like defined with an aesthetic and a kind of like a sonic that you can kind of link everyone together. I don't know. I think that's cool. Like I love that stuff.
Yeah, yeah, me too. And I think when someone's in on the ground floor of things, or someone has a hand in shaping it, they're too on the inside to really understand, and but on the outside we're like, yeah, dude, I love pop punk, it's not a bad thing. I love UK 82. I love all these, just because I'm partitioning doesn't mean I'm, lesser thaning.
Yeah, it's all punk. At the end of the day,
Mhm.
we're all under that one umbrella. And then when it stops being punk, that's when it like that's when it's not as cool.
It's when it becomes good listenable music, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
that's when. Yeah, you say that, but we all know the truth.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, Kurt also. It was great getting to talk to him and getting to kind of like dig in a little bit about the Whiz Kids, because the Whiz Kids, I think is how you're supposed to say it. Anyway, they are one of the most interesting bands, or not even a band, performance art troupe, but the links they have to sort of the punk history, and I feel like they're completely uncredited in the sort of proto-punk conversation, even though they connect like the Screamers and hell, Motley Crue, El Duce, and the Lude. You can connect so much stuff back to this like art troupe.
Yeah. Did did Duff have anything to say about? I'm trying to remember the Duff interview. Did he say
Well,
it?
there's again, I don't want to break kayfabe on this, but there's a
Yeah.
hidden other interview with Kurt and Duff
Mm.
in the Turned Out a Punk archives, which they are not given. They're using their real names on that episode. If you've heard it, it is very strange.
Huh.
It's a very strange episode, but I don't want to give away too much because I feel like they definitely are not budging on this thing. So but there's parts of that interview where we kind of talked about it a little bit.
Okay.
Duff also in his episode, I think he said those guys were a couple of years ahead of him, but
Yeah.
then. As I said, when Randy from Lamb of God was on the show, he texted Nikki Sixx afterwards, and Nikki was like, "Yeah, I was in the Telepath, man. We were kind of like, and talking about his kind of connection to the whole thing. The Telepaths have a single, and
Mm.
it's not that expensive, but there's a lot of those sort of like early Seattle records that are unbelievable. That's the thing of Seattle. I think maybe rivals New York in terms of incredible kind of first wave punk records.
Hmm.
Maybe it's even up there with like Los Angeles in terms of like stuff that was coming out of there. Because there's just like I'm just like constantly shocked that I'll get like some weird random. Maybe not L.A. L.A. had so many fucking records,
Yeah. Yeah.
but like there's just like I'm constantly shocked when there's another Seattle band or another Seattle early punk record that I gotta track down, or now at this point in my life I'll never buy, but at one point in my
Yeah.
life I want to track down.
Duff. Duff is a little younger than Kurt, or
Yeah,
yeah. Okay.
Kurt Kurt is Duff's mentor. I
Yeah.
think like that's like definitely the vibe I've always gotten, and Kim from the Fastbacks too. Like
Yeah.
Duff has a crazy story in his autobiography, or not a crazy story, but like his take on that fight with Nirvana they got into at the MTV Video Awards.
Hmm.
And I think him and Chris got a like in like a fight, And he says in the book that the next day Kim called him and like reamed him out. And he was like, it felt like my big sister was calling me. Just, I felt so shitty.
Hmm.
And like, it really changed the way I kind of like felt about Nirvana.
Huh.
And Duff's got a crazy story about meeting Kurt on the flight Kurt took back to Seattle, being on the plane with him. And then them all hanging out. And then being like, Kurt, come to my house, just stay at my house. And Kurt's like, no, I'm going to meet up with my friend. And anyway, that's when he bought the heroin and led to the suicide kind of.
Really?
Yeah, like I don't know. I brought it up to Duff and he seemed really reluctant to talk about it. But there was like an interview clip with him from years ago where he's like really, like he just tells the story. But it's like, it kind of implies that if Kurt had gone with them, maybe he'd still be alive, kind of vibe. Like
Yeah.
it's a heavy story.
Damn. I don't know. I hate thinking about that situation.
It's probably like the defining moment of our generation in terms of music.
Yeah, man. It's
Definitely.
crazy. I mean, I'll get periods of time where I'm obsessed with, Kurt's death and like uh Biggie and Tupac.
Yeah,
It's just crazy that, you know,
I would say it's only rivaled by Biggie and Tupac's deaths. I think in terms of like defining moments where you're like, oh my god, I remember that day.
yeah.
And I
Like for
feel
our
like
generation at least, because everyone else is older, it's like John Lennon or
Yeah, and I
right,
feel
yeah.
like Biggie's death was big if you knew about hip hop in some way, but it wasn't until after his death when the record came out and it just
Yeah.
like blew up and became something different. Whereas Tupac, I think, because of like the movie stuff and like it felt like he was like already kind of like that next level celebrity, a little bit more at the time of his passing. It's yeah, like very very crazy days, and much music like the nation's music station, Canada's
Mhm.
station, has the final Biggie interview. I believe it's the final Biggie interview, an incredible Biggie interview, that was done in Toronto after he played a food court here. And it's like crazy. He played the Eaton Center food court, and it's like he's in the crowd, and it's nuts. It's like a crazy show. And they have one of the last Tupac interviews, and they have sort of the last significant like Nirvana interview.
Wow.
Yeah, and all those interviews are really great. Like Much Music's archives are ridiculous for like what's in there. Like I
Yeah,
used
I
to
can
go down there
imagine.
and just like it was all on tape still. Like
Wow.
nothing was digitized. I'm sure it is now. It's got to be now.
You never know. I mean,
I think it is because I helped Andrew get in touch with Much Music for some footage for Born
mm,
Innocent and said they were great to deal with and got him a digital cut of it and stuff. So
I just think of like how much insane footage MTV must have. There's no way that's digitized. I'm sure a chunk of it, but
yeah, like the thing that happened at Much Music is like a lot of these raw edits of these, final interviews with people walked out the door with people when they got fired.
oh,
Like people would be like, "Well, fuck you," and just take the masters.
yeah.
So
I'm taking this Biff Naked
yes, definitely,
exclusive.
definitely, some classic Biff Naked's intimate interactives and such events. Shout out to Biff Naked, one of the coolest people that's ever come over to my house. Like
That's
both
sick.
Lauren and I were like starstruck. Like, Biff Naked, that's like Canadian rock royalty.
Yeah, man.
That would be like the guy from Stamping Ground coming over to your house or something. I guess now we should move on to talk a little bit about the Ray Cappo episode, which I know you were anticipating.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I don't even know what to say. Yeah, of course. So I was not let down either.
Yeah, I didn't know what to expect. Like, he is someone who Like Youth of the Day are a band that I only got really into recently. Like back when I was a kid, they were like the band. I think it's I bought the Lost and Found live record first,
Uh,
and it bummed me out because he's not singing. It's a live show. It must have been an amazing live show, but he's like
yeah.
not constantly singing in the microphone, and I was like,
Hmm.
oh God,
Is that the one where he's like, "Slow down,
yeah,
dude"?
yeah.
Yeah.
It's like with potential friends. He's like, we could be potential friends. Yo, Dave, the best of potential friends.
That's amazing.
Yeah, like now I love it, and it's like an unbelievable record. But at the time, as a kid, where you could only buy so many CDs, and I was just getting into this stuff, I was like,
Yeah.
I just bought it because there were so many tracks on it, and because they did weird covers as well on
Oh,
it.
really? What do they
I,
do?
I think they do a Gorilla Biscuits cover
Uh,
on it, and maybe a side by side cover,
huh.
and something else. It's maybe a Minor Threat cover too. Maybe I'm wrong on that. Actually, I might be making that up. Now I just feel like I want to make up SSD and all this other stuff. So they do some covers on it, and so I
Okay.
bought it and just like a typical fuck. I wish I listened to this in the store and bought
Yeah.
it. But like Youth of the Day records were hard to come by at that point. They were out of print.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think like Rev reissued stuff in '97,
Hmm.
and before then there was that like in the States there was this like red bootleg CD. I remember everybody had that had like everything on it.
Whoa, I don't
Um,
know that one.
yeah, it was dope. It was so good. It had everything except for the disengaged 7-inch, I think. I can't remember, but yeah, that was like the bootleg that everybody had. But yeah, I know what you mean. And also when you're young and you're kind of just getting into it, like I mean, first of all, like the mix of We're Not in This Alone
Yeah,
is insane. And his vocals are insane. So if you're our age and you're just finding out about hardcore and you're coming in through, Green Day and, in those days, for some reason, you're like, it was like communicated to you to check out like the Sex Pistols and the Misfits, like right off the bat, right after Green Day. Right. So everything kind of has that kind of pop sensibility or whatever. His voice and their playing and that mix, depending on where you jump in at, could be tough.
you know what's funny too? I didn't even think about it till now, but like when he was talking about how he was drawn, him and Porcel were drawn to Al and SSD because he was a bodybuilder and they
Yeah.
loved that. I kind of hated the fact that those guys were jocks, and I loved Judge because he was a fat guy. And so that was the band I went to, and I love No for an Answer because Dan O'Mahony seemed a little pudgier to me too. So it's like, I loved Infest because they all seem pudgy. There's just I went for the chubbier. Collateral Damage, huge Collateral Damage because I saw a photo of the guy and he looked fat.
That's that's pretty interesting. I mean, I definitely have a couple friends that I'm like, it seems like all their favorite bands, like the guys all seem hot and buff, you
It's
know?
definitely a thing. Like you can be like a certain type. It's like when you're watching wrestling. There's a certain
Yeah.
like physique that you get attracted to as a fan. Like where you're like, oh, I like these guys that look like this, or I like these wrestlers that look like that. And it's definitely like that for front people. Like there's some people that look and see like the Misfits or Harm's Way and think, damn, that's amazing. I look at
Yeah.
that and think, that's not really relatable to me.
Yeah.
Put up Floor Punch up there, and Porter looked very relatable to me.
Yeah. Get Abdullah the Butcher up there singing.
I want a band with Abdul the Butcher
Yeah.
singing. Yeah, I want a singer that looks like they don't work out necessarily.
Yeah.
That's what I find relatable. No disrespect to bands that work out because I also loved Righteous Jams and they work out.
Yeah. No, I wasn't put off by the jock thing. I think like, yeah, I don't know, dude. I loved Youth of Today right from the beginning. They're the goats for me as far as
Yeah, like
straight edge hardcore.
I have every record, and eventually, like I grew to love them. But then when I saw them live in Texas in like 2014, 15 maybe, it was unbelievable. And I was instantly converted to being like, oh, this is one of the greatest bands of all time. And Ray is probably up there in the conversation for like one of the top 10 front people of all time, if not top 5. American hardcore, certainly.
Yeah, I mean, he's other than just like off record, you know, he's so charismatic. I could listen to him talk about anything, you know, like he's just so good at talking. And I'm also like, you know, like I don't buy everything he's selling for certain, you know, but I don't, you know, that's fine. You know, I don't need to buy into everything that the person's pushing, but yeah, I don't know. He's undeniable, you know, unless you're the kind of person who hates that. You know, there's a lot of people who obviously are put off by a charismatic buff dude.
Yeah, like he's also, and like, you know, I said this to him on the episode. He's one of the most divisive front people in a lot of ways too. I think, and this isn't to justify and to say that Ray's done and all these people have done the same thing, but I feel like all great fun people do have that sort of Achilles heel flaw to them in some way, and there's a lot of people that really, you know, find flaws in Ray and take exception to Ray. Like some past guests have thrown tofu dogs at him and admitted on the show, and like I feel like I was kind of brought into that as a young person. Like that, the people that brought me into hardcore were like, he was cool, and then he joins this cult, and it's just over, and everything he does afterwards is garbage, and it's not even worth listening to. And that was kind of, and then I was like shown that issue of Maximum Rock and Roll, and been like this. And then as I get older, and especially now, like hearing his book and looking at the life he's led, I'm like, who the fuck was I at 15 years old to have a fucking opinion about what this guy believes?
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, he was not pushing, but basically pushing those beliefs onto teenagers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so you know, most people in the hardcore scene, if it would be have something to say about that, if he was, you know, evangelical Christian for sure.
Yeah,
right.
But I feel like all people are doing is selling ideologies.
Yeah.
And which ideology helps you sleep better at night is the one that ultimately you should subscribe to. And I feel like even the people that are pushing a secular ideology are pushing an ideology on you in punk rock.
Yeah.
Right? Like it is like if you look at that as being like, and I lean to that more than Krishna or any religion, and but I feel like I don't know, I feel like everyone's just trying to sell you their set of beliefs in punk to music, and it's like, well, if you can listen to the music and you can tolerate the beliefs, then you know, then maybe you'll dig the band.
And even if it's not beliefs, you're selling a, this is such a lame word, but like aesthetic or like, you know, like, I don't know, like I mentioned on the last episode, like there's that like quote unquote good hardcore of ticks boxes to tick, you know, like people who sell that, like, hey, like, you know what I'm saying? Like they're not selling an idea or like a religion or something. It's like, this is the kind of person we are, you know, this is you're selling like a identity.
Yeah. And I find like, I've certainly met people that have been like adamant about not selling out and adamant about like never crossing certain lines, but we're all in the era where every label's now on Spotify. So it's kind of like that ideology also kind of wavers over time. Like that's the thing, is people's ideologies change, people's like belief systems can change. And I feel like you look at Ray, it's like, man, he still believes in this stuff after all these years.
Yeah. And you can tell there's some wavering as far as like maybe I'm sure at one point he's like, I'm 1,000,000% sure that Hare Krishna is God. Now it's more like, he was saying, well, I really like towards the end of the interview where he's like, comparing his outlook to Tim Yohannan. And he's like, if I thought that, if I had a nihilistic view of, atheism and nothing matters, blah, 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 he's like, I'd still want to live this way, and he's like, I've thought of every outcome or every end possibility. And would I still want to be the person I am now and still believe what I believe? Because it would make me live what I believe is the best possible version of me. And the answer is yes. I thought that was really interesting. And like, I'm hardcore atheist pretty much and have a lot of negative thoughts about Hare Krishna in specific that I won't share, obviously. But but I still think, that I don't know, maybe it's his charisma winning me over, but but everything he said, I was like, yeah, man, pretty much everything he said,
Yeah. Yeah, he's certainly someone who that charisma thing comes up a lot when you talk about him. And he is certainly the person that I think all of those guys kind of like point to as being like the guy that was like the leader of stuff. And Walter, I think, talked about it on his episodes. And I think Porcel definitely has talked about it on his episode too, about how Ray was just like sort of this fashionista. Ray was like this sort of like guy that everyone kind of like looked to. And, Ray went down to the Lower East Side and made friends with Harley. Like Ray went down and made friends with like rabies and was like kind of like almost even evangelical then in a way with what he was kind of preaching and selling to people, which is sort of at that point, sort of like, I guess, a secular positivity kind of based youth crew religion, which I would argue is kind of like your religion. Like it's kind of like a lot of straight edge atheist, leaning people's religion. I find like that they got into at that age, and that's the thing they kind of like still defines them.
I mean, dude, when Better Than 1,000 played Nanticoke, Pennsylvania, it was like Jesus was coming, like for sure. Like Alex Russin was grounded and couldn't come, and I was like, you're not gonna go see Jesus. You know what I mean? Like you're going to hell. You're going to where the boozing losers are. You're going to rot with Poison Idea. I'm going to pit with the disciples.
Yo, today on Shuffle, for some reason, probably because Ray was just on the podcast, a Better Than 1,000 record came on. And my God, that record's fucking amazing.
Dude, Better Than 1,000, both records aged so fucking well.
It's crazy.
Because like there was a point in time where I thought, man, these records didn't age well. And I don't know what happened, but they like came back around. Like when I listen to them now, I'm like, damn, this is so good. And part of it to me is his lyrics, man. Like they're like, and just vocal phrasing is really good. And that's where I kind of like I understand what he means by they're more influenced by SSD than Minor Threat. I sort of get that. But the thing that Youth Today has that makes them so popular is in my mind, the same thing that Minor Threat makes Minor Threat so popular is just like this kind of like songwriting that's really magnetic and kind of an earworm that to me, SSD doesn't have. It's like the opposite of that, really. So I understood what he meant by that, but to my ears, I hear the Minor Threat in Youth Today for sure.
Yeah, I do too. That's why I always found it interesting that Ian didn't hear it and tried to like almost wipe his hands of it. I think that's in that All Ages book that Revelation put out years ago.
Well, and also like Ian, of course, I understand his thoughts on it, because it goes back again to what we've been bringing up is like, these people on the ground floor of things, they don't understand other people running with what, you know what I mean? Like I don't know, that I think they can't sympathize with that, especially especially someone as like Ian. You know what I mean? An interesting guy.
Yeah, like Ian is I feel like he's a religion unto himself, right? Like there's people that just like there's like this sort of like Ianism, and he would hate to hear me say that. And
Yeah.
I feel like when I did say that to him, he kind of got really bummed out. But yeah, like, and I feel like Ray's almost like another like a disciple of that kind of went on and found his own way.
Well, you know what? You know what though? Like the thing that's cool about Ray is he never he never like to my knowledge like really monetarily capitalized off of Youth of Today or probably not even Shelter, you know what I mean? To
Or starting Revelation,
yeah, Revelation,
or
yeah.
starting Equal Vision. Like here's a
I didn't even
guy,
think of that. Yeah.
yeah, like here's a guy who like had such an influence, like even like through things that he set up that other went on to do other things, or people he influenced. Like you and me were talking before the show. I think Zach De La Roca is one of those people that was hugely influenced by Ray Cappo in what he was doing, and through that winds up being, I think, the biggest kind of outgrowth of the youth crew thing in Rage Against the Machine. Like Rage Against the Machine put out like an early record on Revelation. Like that
Yeah.
record, like the Inside Out Rage Against the Machine album, I think was supposed to come out on Revelation prior to them breaking up, right? Or maybe it was supposed to go on another label.
I'm not sure. I but yeah, like there was like that 10-inch on Revelation, right? It was like a
Yeah,
10-inch single. Yeah.
yeah, and I think they did the vinyl version of another record, maybe, or maybe I'm just thinking of the 10-inch. But
Maybe. I don't know. Yeah, I just know the 10-inch, but yeah, I mean, I guess yeah, I don't know. You consider Zach like part of the youth crew?
I kind of consider him part of that, like kind of like the California years,
Yeah, yeah.
which I think happened really quickly, which is interesting because you like look at Motown. There's like there's like obviously the Detroit years of Motown, the fabled Detroit years of Motown, and there's like that sort of like Hollywood LA years where it gets a little more disco
Yeah.
stuff. I find like the youth crew stuff moves out to the West Coast and it gets chill. It finds a groove
Mm-hmm.
and it winds up becoming like hugely influential on like a kind of another wave of stuff out west, kind of all along the coast. It's interesting how it interacts with like the guys from Brotherhood, but like I feel like to me that stuff's all connected to Youth Crew.
Yeah, it's definitely in the in the lineage for sure. And I think it's also like that thing that we were talking about, like people like from or in LA for some reason, man, know how to coast, take something and bounce off it, man. Get
Yeah,
some motion. Where over here we can't do it, man. I don't know why.
we're too cold and bitter out here.
Yeah.
Go out west, gotta go out west where the sun's shining. You can be chill, you know. Edges are a little softer out there on for some people, so you know, not everyone. I'm certainly not talking disrespectfully on people that,
No, no.
but
There's hard living out there for sure. You know,
yeah, but I
we
think
all
there's,
know that. That's implied.
but I think there's definitely, certainly some bands that went out west and found some the Cali bud and got into the weed stuff out there, and you know, things got a little chiller and more mellow with some of the youth crew stuff. But I still connect that. Like I feel
Yeah.
like, and like I think it's in the book. Ray talks about taking Zach to like Krishna Temple and having like super long discussions with him about stuff. And Zach was going to form the band with Purcell
Yeah.
post Inside Out and post Judge breaking up when Purcell was living at the Rev warehouse for a while.
Yeah, I remember Porcel. Said he was like kind of like excited about that, and then when he tried to follow up with it, Zach was like kind of missing, and then he found, you know, all of a sudden he heard about Rage Against the Machine. They're like, he's like, where's Zach? He's like, oh, he's off with his like rap metal buddies or whatever, you know.
It's interesting. I'm fascinated by these bands. Like, I'm not implying they're industry plants, but these bands, they just kind of like come out of nowhere,
Yeah.
have a demo, and then are like have like I guess it's a sound. They have a sound that like they
Yeah.
send it to a major label, or a major label scout sees them, and it's like, fuck, this band has it. Because Rage Against the Machine, be it Rage Against the Machine or the Killers, like when talking to the dude from the Killers when he was on the podcast, just about how they went from like demo, like Brightside is like cutting Mr. Brightside as a demo, and just being like, yeah, there's just something about this song that's going to be fucking huge, the producer says, and like pass it on to a guy at a major label, and they're just signed, and next thing you know, they're the biggest band in the world type thing. And you kind of feel that with Rage Against the Machine too. Like, you know, where's Zach? He's like up with these weird music school dudes. I think the bass player was kind of a hardcore kid too, or something.
I don't know, but I do know Tom Morello was like was like trying to make it for years before that, right? Like he was like a hair metal guy and stuff, and is like, you know, he's like a major shredder. Like he could play like Yingwei and shit, I think, you know, and he
Yeah, yeah.
toned it down for Rage.
And then the bass player, I think, met him at like Berklee School of Music, or knew him from Berklee School of Music or
Yeah.
something. And then the drummer, maybe from the same kind of like world of more, was like more Tom's friend or something.
Okay.
They're a band that like I was never that into when
Yeah.
it was like around the first time, but a band that I've got like in particular sort of the Zach stuff, but like unbelievable respect for now, and certainly go back and listen to. Maybe not as much as used to today now, but like I definitely appreciate it a lot more.
Yeah, I was never big into them really. I had a dub of the first LP, and I did buy the second record on CD when it came out, but I was getting into punk at that time, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So
Yeah, I remember the kids at my school were like super, super into like the record coming out, the second one.
yeah.
And then in the video, I think Zach's wearing the Crudos shirt.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh my God, Crudos!" Like that was I was already into Crudos by that point, so I
Oh
was
yeah.
kind of the same thing. I kind of missed. I do remember hearing them on the radio. I guess they were coming to play Toronto at this concert hall show that's sort of like legendary, and I remember hearing them being interviewed just at the very point of like getting into this sort of music, but like not enough to really be able to go to that show. It was like another year before I went to that venue to see a show. It was a kind of funk metal band from here called Project 9. And I was high on acid. It was insane. It was very insane, Jeff.
I'm
Good
trying to think
times.
of some other stuff from the Ray interview to bring up, because there's a lot to talk about for sure.
Yeah, there's a lot. I think, like, definitely there was, like, I guess the moments of contention were Tim Johann and stuff a little bit.
Okay, so I like went and reread that MRR interview, and Ray said that he like inserted like writing in between interview questions. He didn't do that, but what he did, like, the interview is a straight interview for sure.
Yeah.
But then after that, there's like three times as many pages as the interview of like people telling like horror stories of being, you know, taken advantage of in Krishna, and, you know, breaking things down and putting a negative spin on it. And I could understand how, you know, he'd be pissed off about that, but I don't know. Like I said, I have thoughts about Krishna, so I don't know. I don't I don't think that interview was as harsh as you guys are making it out to be, but
I think it was harsh in the context of the fact they were friends before it.
yeah.
And it definitely does paint it like this dude's fucking brainwashed. And like, yeah, he's brainwashed, but like, you know, not that I agree with Ray, because Ray talked a lot of shit on Tim, and I don't feel that at all. I think Tim definitely was happy in his life, and I feel like his legacy is certainly going to be championing by me as long as I live, and the importance of what he kind of built and set up. But I think by the same token, Ray has lived a very happy life, quote unquote, brainwashed by this cult. I think that was the thing that was harsh because I remember reading it
Yeah.
at the time that like he's been brainwashed, like there's no reaching this guy at this point, like, and it's like, yeah, maybe he was, but like, I don't know, like I just don't necessarily see the negativity in the same
Well,
way.
like also like, hey, a deprogrammer might try to deprogram him. How's that for irony for him to be like someone they want him to be because he disagrees with their philosophy? You know what I'm
I
saying?
I I had like when I was in high school, our principal was this guy who was friends with this dude that used to work for, and I've never looked this shit up. I really need to look this up because it was at the time pre-internet, but worked for this like Canadian government anti-cult organization that would reverse kidnap people from
Yeah.
cults and deprogram them, and then they got sued into oblivion because of it. They like tried to deprogram someone and they couldn't because
Uh,
they're like, I'm not in a cult. Like
right.
I believe. And he was telling crazy stuff to us about Krishna. But this is pre me getting into punk rock. And then getting into punk rock, like right around that time, it was like, oh my God, Krishna stuff's in punk rock? This is crazy. And my dad was always kind of like, not, like they make fun of it in the movie Airplane.
Yeah.
Like there was like sort of this presence of it in England at the time that my dad was like, oh yeah, that's this like cult thing
Yeah.
that people get into. And
Well,
I'm
because I
like,
think at that time, right, they were in airports,
yeah.
collecting money and selling, pamphlets and stuff like that. And one of the people in the MRR thing afterwards were like kind of breaking down how they kind of scam people a little bit out of money and stuff like
Well,
that.
JJ talks about in his book freely about how they were doing all these scams back
Yeah.
then. But like, I don't know, I felt like, this also was like my complete misunderstanding that there was like big Krishna. There
Yeah.
was like, there's like some sort of like Roman Catholic Vatican type thing sounding out edicts that everyone's following, like not realizing there's like tons of different sects and there's tons of different people that like worship Krishna, and it has nothing to do with any one religion, and that was my misunderstanding and how it was missed. So like I remember finding out that like Baby Gopal was a Krishna band and being like, oh, this is like, it was like this conspiracy theory that was being put on us.
Mm.
Oh, our special guest is here. We're gonna have to put a pin on this conversation now. Welcome to the show, please, Jerry A. Let me see, is Jerry here? Okay, Jerry's coming in. All right, let's see. Yeah, Jerry and Ray, what's up, guys?
Hello, Damian. How is it looking over there? In the state of the 50? Is it the 51st state of USA?
Well, if our president has his way, they're going to lay down open gates and welcome them into our loving arms.
We'll be a pretty big state geographically. I think that's like maybe not population wise, but all of Canada, like we got to be close to California.
Well, you know what? I think Canada should just take the West Coast and fuck the rest of those people. We'll join Canada.
Well, that's the thing is I think there's like a real chance that I think there's gonna be a lot of people from America wanting to join up here. I heard like there's a bunch of Yale professors that have moved up here recently.
Yeah. Hey, Damien, we have a thing across the screen right here. I don't know if you can see that. I don't know if there's this meeting has continuous meeting that enabled. You can find messages sent.
Oh, I think if you just press that.
Go ahead, President.
There you go.
Look at you. Look at
There
the
we
brain
go.
on Ray.
Oh my God! Well, I'm Ray. I am beyond excited to see you. Welcome. I guess you're in America right now.
Yes, that's right. We're on tour with the three of us in Hard-Ons with Jerry A. right in the center and front of the stage for the band.
Well, this is a reunion of sorts too, right? Because you guys have done this in Australia.
I consider this like continuation of unfinished business, and I'm pretty sure Jerry feels the same way.
Yes.
Yeah. I was going to say, out of all the people, because you guys have done this with a few different people over the years, who's the best, like, you don't have to say Jerry because Jerry's beside you, but who's the best to kind of bring out there? Or like, what? Maybe not who's the best, but like, what are some of the ups and downs of the different guest vocalists that you've kind of brought into the Hard-Ons picture?
Well, there's been absolutely no downs at all because it's all been so brief, you know. For example, the show we only did 2 shows with Henry Rollins and did 1 single. We only had 1 song together with Jerry, and we've only done 1 brief tour of Australia with Jerry in 1993, and that was a hell of a lot of fun. But that was brought up because when we toured with Poison Ivy in 1989, Jerry would often come on stage and join us for a number here or there, and we just enjoyed that presence and vocal ability. So that's why we took that on, and there are no downs at all. Well, I've loved everything.
Was there somebody else I didn't know about? What was there?
I guess Celibate Rifles, but I guess that's more of a band collaboration, right? Or is this a split?
Yeah, that was a split record, and we had nothing to do with each other's recordings, mercifully.
Okay. Well, when you guys did make the last appearance together on record, it's on a Skeen record. Too Far Gone was released in America on Skeen Records, which for me is the most interesting label in kind of American music history. I will say that label, you can connect a lot of disparate worlds. I can connect millions of different things. I recently learned that Gina, I believe, from Belly, was in a band that was on a compilation they put out. There's like a lot of amazing bands. How'd you wind up on Skeen Records?
So is it like, are you like Harry Smith anthology type thing, like a Smithsonian? Is that the label type?
No, Skeen. Skeen put out the Hard-Ons record.
I can't. I don't think I have the
vinyl pressing goes for $250.
Label.
Twin. Okay. Oh, well, I think it's about time America represses that record.
Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah, that record's amazing.
The only other band that I know of on Skeen is the Dogface Hermans.
Dogface Hermans, Green Day.
Hermans. Yeah.
Green Day was on Skeen Records.
Green Day. So they probably have money. If I tried to like press it, they could probably crush me like a bug.
I don't think so, because I think the guy Jeff who ran the label is now a big time celebrity chef.
So he doesn't need these pennies and nickels and dimes.
yeah, he's but no, I don't think he's doing it. No, I think he totally let the label go, and I'm sure giving all his stuff back to the bands, because also on the label was Trenchmouth, Fred Armisen's band.
Oh wow! Well, maybe I'll put that out too.
Yeah,
there you go. Just bootleg everything. Skeen Records is now belong property of Jerry A. I was very rude and dove into this conversation.
You know, when Alchemy,
go on. Sorry.
When Alchemy folded, when Alchemy Records folded, they sent me the master tapes to the Alchemy. I have the big analog tapes for that compilation with the Melvins and Neurosis and Clown Alley and Poison Idea was on it, and it's sitting in my garage. And I'm like, I want to re-release it, but you know, I asked Buzz, and he's like, I don't care, but I'm not going to do it without everybody's permission. So
I think it'd be pretty easy. There's like, people from all those bands still kind of around.
Yeah, but sometimes they don't get too agreeable.
Yeah.
In their older ages. Get old and cranky.
I was very rude and dove in without introducing my co-host. This is Nick Woj. Woj, this is Jerry and Ray. Woj and I have now doing this. We're doing this live. This is like the new kind of spin-off podcast where we talk about 2 episodes of the show. And we've just been talking about the episode with Kurt Bloch from the Fastbacks. And Ray Cappo from Youth of Today was just on the show.
I saw both of those.
Oh, I was going to say, I know you had deep feelings, I'll put it mildly, about Straight Edge the first time around with Minor Threat. I'm saying illustrated by Ian MacKaye, 12-inch, and Drinking is Great comp. But how did you feel about Straight Edge, that second wave of bands, when they all started popping off?
And I mean, just younger kids doing the same thing. It's like, let them do what they want. But I think the thing I wrote to you about, I messaged you, or maybe I didn't, was the Kurt podcast you did. He was talking about Guns N' Roses playing, and at the first time they played in Seattle, and I went to a theater show up there, and I remember walking next door to see Duff's new band, and looking at seeing Guns N' Roses, and coming back, and I didn't think it was the lineup that Kurt said. All right, I mean, we can all disagree. So Kurt says, "Oh yeah, it was Daigle abortions, this and this and this, or whatever." And I was like, I remember being at that show, and I think I played because there's no other reason to go to Seattle except playing.
Well, there are flyers for both shows. There's flyers for both shows that night, and like the flyer with was in the one room was Raw Power and Stark Raving
Raw
Mad.
Power, that's what it was.
Stark Raving Mad was opening, and God, I'm trying to remember who the other band on the bill was. There's a third band, not particularly kind of hardcore, but then in the other room, it's Guns N' Roses with the Fastbacks, and then 5150, who I'm like, is that the band from either I think Nevada? I think they were from, or San Diego, maybe.
Were they on Spitting Teeth? Is that the thing?
They had like
that compilation record?
They might have been. They were definitely a band that was like around that kind of like time period, from somewhere on the sort of like West Coast further down. And I'm like, wow, that's so weird. I've never heard about them being on that show, unless it's like, a Seattle band called 5150, which there's a good chance it is.
Yeah. Anyway, it's just me. I'm getting curmudgeon, and I like to argue in my old age, so it's just like,
there are flyers to back it up. I think if you're playing in that town too at the same time, that's crazy. Or could you?
Well, you know what? There's 3 different flyers. There's 3 different flyers with Poison Idea opening for Motorhead. We never played with them either, so there you go.
Well, could you have been going to see 10 Minute Warning and not Guns N' Roses as Duff's new band?
Yes, I do remember 10 Minute Warning too. That's a good possibility. But no, because I remember one of the last shows with 10 Minute Warning in Portland and hanging out with Duff and him going to LA and then coming back, and they're going, "This is his new band Next Door," and going over there and looking at them and going, "Well, they got 2 girls in the band." They're like, "No, that's the Fastbacks." He laughed. He hated it.
Damn. Well, either way, what an incredible night. Maybe it was Poison Idea that blew Kurt's mind, and he kind of thought it was Raw Power.
Maybe so.
Did the Fastbacks ever go to Australia, Ray?
Never. And in fact, there are probably about 8 people in Australia who know who the Fastbacks are. I am one of them. I'm quite the fan, but not many people know them in Australia. Which is a shame, because I think they are a fantastic, powerful band.
It's a crime.
Yeah, great band.
I think Australia is like the one place in the world where, not maybe the one place, but one of the places in the world where domestic music is more powerful than sort of like American music coming over. Like, I think in Canada and even in the UK at times, it feels like American music is a very powerful force, and certainly international English speaking wise, but not in Australia. Australians love Australian music in general, I find. Other than yourself, of course, who is a very
There is a lot of that, yes, because uh, I think it speaks volumes about the caliber of bands from Australia. I think we have plenty of really good bands. That's one of the reasons.
yeah.
Right? Repeat the thing you wrote for the Punk Rock Museum about Australian music.
Oh, yes. Fat Mike asked me to write something about Australian punk for the Punk Rock Museum in Nevada. And my take on Australian punk was that, that Saints record, I'm Stranded.
No, he's never heard of it.
No.
So it speaks about alienation and being disconnected with the world and all that kind of stuff. A lot of Australians feel that way, and punk rock was the vehicle for a lot of expression for a lot of people who didn't quite know their place as Australians in within Australia, because we're a nation of immigrants, and we treat the Indigenous population very poorly. And we don't quite know who we are. So we made myths about who we are, the golden Australian with the sandy blonde hair on the beach, the afternoon barbecues, the easygoing beach lifestyle, and all that kind of stuff. But we know that that's only a very, 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 very small proportion of Australia. A lot of Australian people don't have any connection to that kind of a lifestyle. So we made Australia School of Myth making, but I think punk rock is the vehicle for dispelling a lot of those myths, and it speaks about our alienation as alienation as a country of people that don't quite know who we are. We don't know. We haven't addressed how to make it up to the Indigenous population that we've treated poorly, because we can't agree on any sort of the right thing to do. So punk rock is a really important vehicle for us. So a lot of Australian punk bands have a good way of expressing their alienation, because punk rock is such a direct, linear method of delivering something that is a big topic like confusion or alienation. Punk rock is a perfect vehicle for us. So we have a lot of great punk rock from Australia for that reason, I think.
Yeah, and I think when you said it, like it starts in Australia, that's the thing. It's like so fascinating with punk rock, because by like 75, it's kind of kicking off all over the world simultaneously. And it's not necessarily like you can point to like one record as being like, oh, this was the influence that everyone was kind of copying. It's like, no, there's the Saints are going at the same time as the Ramones are getting going, at the same time as like Dr. Feelgood's kind of doing stuff. At the same time, like there's stuff popping off in New York, where the Dogs had moved to New York around that time too, and like it's just like a really exciting time for rock and roll, where just everyone was kind of like ready for something new, it seems.
Yeah, Radio Birdman started very early too, and when you talk to any of those original members, they always say how much they hated the mainstream culture and music. They hated it, and so they wanted to start something very volatile and fresh. And it changed my life as a little kid, growing up listening to the Saints and Radio Birdman. I was an immigrant, so I didn't really relate to Australian mainstream culture, but the Saints and Radio Birdman I could get behind 100%, because they actually address my alienation as an immigrant to me. I don't know if that makes sense to you.
Well, as much as I can relate to it as being like sort of like a white kid that did find like certainly alienation for like, being a settler as well in Canada, but certainly alienated from mainstream culture and like a real disdain for all of it. Like, it was funny because Woj and I were talking about this earlier, like in regards to the Kurt episode. I did an episode with Peanut Gunpowder a couple months ago, and I made the mistake of referring to Crimpshrine and Green Day as pop punk. and those guys got really offended by that.
Oh.
And it sort of led to a conversation of this idea. They were saying at the time that pop punk didn't exist, and it was like a post Blink-182 construct. And I'm like, no, I think the idea of pop punk goes back, and I think there's like, it's not it's a pejorative thing post Blink-182 maybe, but like, it wasn't necessarily a thing. It kind of described bands that were kind of like applying melody back into this sort of like, music of alienation, or music that was like confrontational.
Yeah.
Don't I remember hearing pop punk with the Buzzcocks in like 1979? People saying pop punk.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I said. It goes back to the Buzzcocks, and I think like, I don't know, like it's interesting because I think with Poison Idea too, like Chris O'Toole, who used to do Footnotes with me, the other podcast I used to do, friend of Woj's as well. We used to have like a constant debate about Poison Idea, where my favorite era of Poison Idea is kind of like this sort of like era where you're kind of like searching for melody a little bit more. It's kind of like the pop punkier era of Poison Idea, Feel the Darkness being like my North Star. And he always he's like, no, I like it when they were way more aggressive. Like he was always arguing the early records were much more his kind of thing. So it's, I don't know, there is a distinction, but like both are aggressive, right? Like I don't think it's necessarily negative in any sort of way when bands trying to be more melodic.
I'll just take Happy Tom and his tag of death punk, and I'll just leave it at that. It's like the first death punk band. I'm like, there you go.
Actually, back in 1986, we released a T-shirt and we had Death Pop written on it.
Death pop.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Wow, there you go. That's it.
Yeah. Woj, you wanted to ask Jerry something.
Yeah, Jerry, I always noticed that you had some cool footwear in Poison Idea promo photos, specifically like Jordans and Nikes and cool basketball shoes. Was that something that you were you're cognizant of, or you were doing on purpose, or was that just on accident?
I was being sponsored by those guys. So it was a free shoe.
I mean, yeah. I saw a picture of you in like Jordan 12s, which is insane to me.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I brought my nice black shiny dress shoes to wear on stage, but these stages I will fall. I can't wear them on stage, so they look nice, but they're not practical to wear on stage. So yeah. I'm wearing my moccasins these days.
Okay. So it was more just.
But no, I just function. I mean, you know what you know what? If you went to my closet, you'd aghast. Dude, there's so many shoes. I have so many pairs of shoes. I'm a sneaker pimp.
Nice.
Well, Imelda Marcos of punk.
Imelda Marcos of punk.
Well, I don't mean to give up.
Yeah, good eye.
I don't mean to blow up Woj's spot, but Woj is a designer of shoes as well. So I think Poison Idea Jordans would be sick.
Yeah, one off. Because those Poison Idea fans are very, very athletic.
Well, I think that's like a parallel between between Poison Idea and like the straight edge bands, right? Because in punk, like that's kind of like the only place where you would see bands having those like 80s basketball sneakers and stuff and jumping around, and then would be like that second wave of straight edge like Youth of Today. And then in your realm of hardcore, I would notice you wearing Nikes as well, and it's just kind of a weird meeting there. You wouldn't expect.
I'm fans of those bands. I'm fans of those bands too. So
Nice. It's funny because we were talking earlier about like why I wasn't a fan of Youth of Today, and it was like because I was like I couldn't relate to them as a fat kid. I love Poison Idea. You guys spoke to me in a profound way, and Ray was talking about how Youth of Today was much more influenced by SSD than Minor Threat because he looked at Al as a bodybuilder and was like, that's what I want to be like. And I felt that with Poison Idea. I'm like, certainly not maybe in all the lifestyle things, but like in terms of aesthetic on stage, physical aesthetic, I'm like, yeah, I want to look like Poison Idea on stage.
Freedom. That's what punk was about.
Exactly. I haven't tried what was it like a super beer where you take the bottle of Old English and you let it go flat and then fill it with Night Train.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Those you have to try everything once in life.
I think I'll do for my 50th birthday. That'll be my celebration.
So yeah, but you know what? Just not to get off subject, but I'm just thinking about this thing we're doing is so we're so happy with playing with these bands. I don't know if you guys want to promote the Melvins and Napalm Death, but
Oh, absolutely.
it's amazing.
I wish that tour was coming here. That's like the greatest tour. When that tour got announced, I'm like, that to me is a perfect tour. I can't think of, I don't know, I can't think of like groups that have kept going that are like, in a way that, like the Hard-Ons I put in that category too, but Napalm Death, Hard-Ons, and the Melvins, and then added you, Jerry, to the mix. It's like, fuck, I wish that was coming to Toronto.
Yeah, I mean, I seriously have to pinch myself every night because it's amazing. It's just crazy.
Melvins with Stephen McDonald, I think, are like one of the greatest live bands. But the Pinkest too. Like they're like one of the greatest live bands on the planet.
Excuse me. Yeah, the Melvins are a machine. They can, so they're great.
Are they out the door every night after?
Yeah, Stephen McDonald. As soon as you mention his name, he hears you and he comes running.
Really?
Is it my turn for the camera?
Is he here?
No, he just left. I told him go.
Oh, damn.
Yeah. Steve McDonald is one of the finest bass players I've ever heard. And when I heard that he joined the Melvins, I was a little bit shocked because he's so melodic, but he's absolutely killing it. And the three bands get along really well. And the other thing is, of course, the three bands sound nothing like each other at all whatsoever. But the people I noticed that the audience have absolutely loved all three bands, and it's been good playing in front of that crowd actually, and I've enjoyed Melvin's and Napalm Death's music immensely. But I think all three bands sound very, very, very different, and musically we've taken completely different paths, and even Melvin's I like a lot because they're always very prolific, and they do a lot of records that sound quite different from each other, and I find that quite inspirational. And to do this tour, we grabbed Jerry to be the front man, and to make it work, we wanted to make a set that would really play to the strengths of all four members of the Hard-Ons, not just the three of us. And Jerry has to fit. We want to make the strength of the band include Jerry in as well. And I think, and I'm so happy with the set. And I think Jerry and the other guys are as well. And we're having the proverbial time of our lives, actually.
Yeah, I think the thing that links all your guys together to me is that you're all punk bands. Like all the bands have had members on this show, or obviously have punk rock history and stuff. And so I feel like, yeah, like it's obvious sonically you're doing different things, but the thing that unites you all is that you're all punk and you're still punk after all these years. There's no fucking weirdness. And once again, Jerry, in that category as well, as like someone who's still here, still cool, still able to make awesome music. And yeah, like what a triple bill.
Coming to your town soon.
Yeah, not Toronto though.
No.
Yeah, we're afraid that if we go across the border, we won't be able to get back in.
I don't blame you. Yeah, we're supposed to go to America with Propaganda, but they canceled all their U.S. dates, so I don't know if we're going to be able to do it anymore.
Well, Damian, this too shall pass.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like I want to get down there and play again because obviously I love playing in the U.S., but we'll see. We'll see what happens. Yeah, no, we still have our visas, so Where
Yeah.
I think if you
Yeah,
had
and they're
to,
making them harder. They're making it harder for us now. They're like, you need a new ID to travel out of the country because but we're not the center of the universe. It's like there's rock and roll going on in every country, and um I'm embarrassed to be here. I'm sorry, but I'm like I said, I'm very optimistic, and I'm hoping it will pass.
yeah, I've got friends, bands who have gone down to the States and played shows, and that's the thing is over half the country hates them and hates obviously what's happening, and probably more people than that now hate what's happening.
Oh yeah,
Looking at everything that's going down, so I know it'll pass. It's weird. Like once again, Canada elects a liberal. I support a different political party up here than Carney, but I would definitely prefer him over the alternative that was looming over us here. And so, once again, like Trudeau, I think this guy's better than Trudeau, though, if I'm being honest. Because Trudeau,
well,
it's wild going back and looking at how Trudeau got elected, and it was just, Anyway, go on. Sorry.
well, in a way, it's Trump being a loudmouth and rattling his saber is setting the stage for other play. I mean, like what just happened in Australia with your.
That's right. In Australia, the Conservative Party were well ahead in the polls, and they were going to regain power. And what happened was the leader of the Conservative Party started playing by the Donald Trump playbook, on immigration and denial of climate change and that kind of stuff. And people just got really turned off. And he was attacking things like, the rights of people who are, LGBTQIT, the community. He was attacking them and that kind of stuff. And Australia basically crushed him. And the left-wing party got in because
Following Trump.
yes, Trump. People got scared of anyone mimicking Trump. They just went, no, we don't want this in Australia. So exactly what happened to Canada happened to Australia.
Yeah, like Polyev, seeing him get defeated was amazing. It was worth seeing our new prime minister dancing to Down with Webster, which has got to be one of my least favorite groups in the whole world, and that was his celebration music. No diss on them. We've got some mutual friends. More power to them. They're much more successful than I am in music, but God.
Should do a split single.
I don't think that's happening anytime soon. But you know what I did find out last episode? I talked a little shit on Candlebox and doubting whether or not the lead singer was a fan of punk or hardcore, and then I had it thrown back at me that he is very much indeed a fan of punk and hardcore, and went to high school with Marching Plague, the Fearless Iranian from Hell.
Oh wow! Wow.
Yeah,
well, he's got his stripes.
Yeah.
I apologize. I took it all back. I feel like that's the thing about punk. It's like you can connect so much weird, interesting, cool stuff back to it.
Yep.
It's crazy right now in Australia. It's like it feels like rock and roll has like been back for a little bit. Are you seeing that, Ray?
Well, it never went away, but now it's been embraced in a mainstream kind of a way. So
Sorry, that's what I meant when I said that. Yeah, sorry. I know it never went away.
So the most popular band in Australia right now is a band called Amyl and the Sniffers. You can't get away
from them before.
Really?
Nobody's ever heard about them.
They
Australian. Australian.
You can't get away from them. They're on TV 24 hours a day. And the other band that's also popular is a band called The Chats.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I can vouch for them. I can vouch for The Chats. They're wonderful, wonderful people, and both bands are really good. They struggled as unknowns for a long time before they became popular in the mainstream, and they're the real deal. They write great songs, and they're both great live bands, and somehow they had something that the mainstream wanted that countless other bands before them just could not translate to. And and I can't speak on behalf of Amel and the Sniffers or the Chats as to whether they literally went for the mainstream's jugular or not, because I'm not them. I can't say. But all the Australian punk bands before them that never attained that status, I know for a fact that the last thing on their mind was becoming popular. So Saints, Radio Birdman,
Forever, a million bands.
none of those bands, the Leftovers, the Scientists, none of those bands cared about anything other than playing their music.
Some of them care about drugs
I have
too.
the first Damaged Goods, Amel and the Sniffers, toys they did.
Right,
And
yeah.
I don't think they were shooting to be. I think they're just a rock and roll band that love that music, and that's what they're doing.
Yes.
And that's what they're good.
Yes.
And they kept going, and they just kept writing better songs, and that's fine. I don't think anybody. They're not. Who does that? Who sets out to go? I want to be.
Yes.
But Machine Gun Kelly or some bullshit like that.
The weird thing is those bands are very uniquely, both Chats and Amel and the Sniffers are very uniquely Australian. So I could understand how they took off in Australia, because they have something to say to the Australian people, and how they took off all over the world. I'm a little bit more surprised, but when you see them live, they're dynamite.
Well, that's why, because they're good. What about Civic? I mean, I think Civic's a great new band too. I think
they're fantastic band. They're not young kids. They've been playing for a long, long time. They're all in their late 30s, so they're not young kids, but they're a fantastic. I mean, they've been around for a long time, so they've been playing for 20 years. So they've got the chops.
Yeah. Well, I just heard of this new band the other day. I think they're all young kids. I think they're called the Cosmic Psychos. They're a bunch of young boys. And I think I listened to them.
Yeah, just babies.
Yeah.
Just youngins.
Cosmic Psychos are a fantastic.
It's something in the
Still
Australian
good, yeah.
water. It's something in the Australian water. They're not sharks either.
Yeah.
Well, Amel and the Sniffers were 3/4 of the band were on the podcast. I will definitely vouch for them. They are punk rock kids. It's interesting. They were super influenced by Piss Jeans. And when they like heard Piss Jeans and were like, and apparently that was like what fueled their like demo recordings. They're just like super inspired by that. And when you listen to that and you're like, oh yeah, I kind of hear that influence there too, or that sound a little bit too, to what they're doing. And yeah, I think they're a band that they were on the show. Like I thought they were great. And then there was like that song Chewing Gum, I think it's called, or something, or Stuck on You is what it's called. And that came on like a playlist that my wife played in the car, and I was like, "Oh my god, this song!" And I realized, "Oh yeah, this band's really good." Chats as well. Chats are super cool. So Cosmic Psychos connection heavy with that band as well, and
they toured a lot with the Cosmic Psychos, so they learned a lot from them in work ethic and their sense of humor and all that kind of stuff, and they're very, very Australian. But I can tell you, I know those guys quite well, and they're the real deal. They're actually, none of it is actually. That's one really refreshing thing about them. None of it is fictional for them. They're actually like that. They're a little bit like the Cosmic Psychos. They're actually like that as people.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, they definitely have that. They like to party kind of vibe.
Yes.
Who doesn't?
Yes.
Yeah. Butch Vig said the Cosmic Psychos were like drank. Yeah. Butch Vig said the Cosmic Psychos drank the most beer of any band. They just like could not believe beer. Where they were at Smart Studios, the beer that was available around there and how cheap it was, and they were very excited about that.
Yum.
I feel like that would be the one record I would love to hear Butch Vig have recorded is a Poison Idea record.
Well, sure.
That would have sounded so cool.
Well, he definitely has a sound. I mean, yeah, that sounds crazy. That would be great.
It's interesting to hear this way he draws out kind of melody in bands in a way, and I think he would have done something around Feel the Darkness that would have been really cool to kind of hear what he would have done with your guys' sound around that record.
Yeah, about that time that was coming out, I was a fan of Albini's, and when I was a kid, I grew up in Missoula, Montana, and I knew that Albini did too, and so back when you used to write letters, and I wrote him a letter when he was in Chicago, and he started doing like, it was way back when, but I still have the letters, and he was writing to me, and he goes, "Oh, I hear you worked with Ian Burgess." And we did that with the guy who worked with like Naked Reagan and a bunch of bands. And I was like, yeah, I want to, maybe we can go to Chicago and record some stuff with you. And he's like, you know what? Of course, absolutely, no problem. And so we just kept writing letters back and forth. And then the things changed, and we did it was after Feel the Darkness by then, but it's just, what if?
Yeah.
What if Steve Albini would have recorded Poison Idea? That would have been, what if Butch Vig? That would have been amazing. That would have been, what if
Yeah, but
new Hard-Ons and me singing, what if we do, I mean, we have like, right now we just did a single that today was the #1 single in Australia. Independent single. We released it, and in Australian charts, it's the #1 independent single.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's why we're in this hotel room partying.
I'm drinking Canada Dry ginger ale.
So, but we still have like, 10, 12 songs in the can, and we're going to do an album, the next album, the next step.
That's
so,
awesome.
It's not just this tour and this single and this. We're going to keep going forward.
I love the fact that you guys had that connection back in the day, like that, like finding that scheme, pressing that CD used as a kid, and like seeing you singing on that track. There's just something about that record that was so perfect to me, and I've always had that deep connection between the two of you. The bands, I guess. So to see it kind of come together, so like, I don't know, it's perfect. All these years again come together, I should say.
We learned a lot from Poison Idea, the Hard-Ons, when we were growing up. We learned a lot about punk music through listening to Poison Idea records and watching them play. And one was how to take music up a notch in terms of oral violence. And so we started experimenting with all sorts of different sounds, and maybe the only way forward after that was to get a lead singer who wasn't like but someone who had a more aggressive approach to vocals, and that's why we asked Jerry to sing on that Too Far Gone album. But it was only one song, and we always thought we would do something together. But what happened was Poison Idea, and both Hard-Ons and Poison Idea started to
break up.
Yes.
At the same time.
Yes. So I'm not just saying unfinished business for the sake of cliche. It just really does feel like one day we will maybe make a record with Jerry doing all the vocals and us playing all the instruments. Just because we have so much time for Jerry as a friend and a vocalist from our past experiences, and it was such a shame that was only one song on that record. So I'm very happy. I'm over the moon about what's going to come with the new album. It's going to be a full length with Jerry as right bang in the center and front of the Hard-Ons playing the instruments. So I think that's really exciting for me.
But no, I'm saying unfinished business because that was always something that made me really kind of sad that I went to Australia and I was in the middle of my extreme drug use. And I was, that was one of the tricks we used to do on stage. I would drink 5 gallons of alcohol on stage every night, like hard liquor, and see how, and I just blew my mind out. And I had this machine behind me, this rock and roll machine just going crazy. And I'm sitting there just melting on stage like a big puddle of just destruction. And I always thought that I wanted to get a mulligan and do it over. And I get the chance, and not many people in their lives get a chance to do it over. That's to have this happen years later is unbelievable. So to do it now is just like, it's crazy. And we're doing it. And so I have a reason to do it. And I'm excited. Can you cuss on your live thing? Or you are live, right? Oh, he froze.
Damian, you're muted.
Sorry. Yeah, you can cuss on this thing. You can definitely cuss.
It's all right.
I muted myself to cough and didn't take myself off mute. I was listening to that.
Hey, there you are.
Yeah. Well, my memories of the 1993 Australian tour with Jerry A have all been like fantastic. We were on tour for this festival circuit with Iggy Pop, the Be Suburban, Sonic Youth, Mudhoney, and Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. Look, we had the time of our lives, and Jerry's saying that he wasn't satisfied with what his contribution on that tour. Me and Blackie, we're the opposite. We just love what Jerry had done, because all of a sudden, sonically, we went up a notch, and it was something very different for us to have a configuration finally where there is somebody between me and Blackie standing there with a center microphone, delivering something, and me and Blackie don't have to be the non-singing frontman, but we could step back and just play really well, and we were able to do that. And then we were over the moon with Jerry's contribution on that tour. We really were, because it was very orally, very destructive. I have VHS cassettes of our performances to document it, and the band was fantastic, and
it was.
Jerry was fantastic. So
I stand corrected.
Yeah,
it was good.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, Damian, on this trip to look over and see these three people surrounding me is, it's these guys. It's like I can feel the energy and directions.
Yeah, that show is
I can't imagine another band that would have these three people.
Oh, sorry. I think there's a bit of a delay. I was going to say, like the that tour is so storied on this podcast that you guys do. You guys like that because like that's that tour where Mudhoney nearly convinced you, Jerry, to throw Mick Harvey overboard on that cruise ship or the party boat.
Oh yeah.
Ray was there.
Yeah, I was there. That was Henry Bogdan, the bass player from Helmet, had connections with Poison Idea because he was the first Poison Idea drummer. So we struck up a good friendship with Helmet. So Helmet and the Hard-Ons were sitting at one table, and the boat was moored. We had a party boat when we were in Sydney, and it was for the big day out crew and bands. And we were sitting at one table, and the boat hadn't taken off. We saw on the just on the table behind us, there was the Mudhoney guys and Sonic Youth guys on the other table, and I pressed and I heard some wings flapping, and it was Nick Cave. He was on the boat. And he walked past us. He saw me. He saw the guys out as Mudhoney. He didn't really acknowledge anybody. He went straight to the DJ that was playing at the front of the boat, and he was the little guy from Disposable Heroes of Hypocrisy. He had the headphones on his DJ going, whoop, 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 and Nick Cave just stood there in his suit staring at him. And then he pirouetted, he spun around and walked straight past us again, not acknowledging anybody. We saw him walking down the plank, and he got in his black car, and the black car just drove off. And then the boat took off. And then
he upheld his contractual obligations.
Yeah, and I said, there are two people not on this boat. One is Nick Cave, the other person is Iggy Pop. But Mick Harvey's here, so we can throw him off the overboard.
It's just, I mean, we're all the same. People shouldn't be rude and be. I mean, I don't care who you are. I mean, I must throw Elon Musk off the boat if it would have been you too.
I met Iggy a few times over the years, and it's kind of like I've had some of the greatest experiences with them, and then some experiences where he definitely did not want to talk to me. And and fair enough. Like everyone's got good days and bad days, and
Sure,
Iggy Pop's one of those people where every single person's going to want an experience with him that he runs into. Like every person's going to be like, "Oh my God, like what's up?" Like not every person, but I imagine like it's kind of constant with him because he's in the Crow.
Yeah, well, we saw him. He was swimming, and we were in this hotel room, and Ray goes, "Who's that guy swimming with his sunglasses on?" Like it was Iggy. Just leave him alone. Just let him swim. Just let him swim with his sunglasses on.
I thought a human-sized lizard had fallen into the water with sunglasses on, doing dog paddles. Sunglasses and doing a dog paddle.
I remember.
We opened for the Stooges one time, and it was the day after they had all their shit stolen in Montreal. And after the show, like I brought like a Destroy All Monsters single because I'm like, maybe I'll meet Ron Ashton and I'll ask him to sign this. And we got to the show. We were there all day. Their crew was super cool to us. Like we were like just like local talent. Like it was like fucked up early on type thing. And Iggy doesn't sound check ever, I don't think. His like roadie sound checks.
He's done it before.
Exactly. Like his roadie sound checks for him. They did like a bunch of Stooges songs, and they all like were trying out this new gear that night because they had like Watt was playing with them, and Scott was playing with them, obviously, and Ron was still alive at that point. Rest in peace. And then after the show, like we played, and I had like a cordless mic. We rented a cordless mic, and we played at Massey Hall, this big theater, and I climbed all over the place. And the Stooges came out, and they were like the best fucking band I think I've ever seen in my life. Like, just insane. Iggy was doing stage dives, like feet first, like head first stage dives into seats. It's like a seated venue. It was crazy, the stuff he was doing. And he called us out on stage. And it was like, it was just like the best night of my life. And then invite us into their dressing room. And so I'm like, oh man, like he and I are friends for life. And then he like brought me into his room and like talked to me, and it was like super cool. And then so they came back to Toronto a couple years later, and I was introducing all the bands that night at this event. And then it got to the Stooges. By this point, Ron had passed away, and it was what's his name, James playing guitar now. James? Is it James
Williamson?
Right? Yeah, James Williamson playing guitar.
Yeah, James Williamson.
Yeah. And so they were playing, and I was like introducing all the other bands, and I was supposed to introduce them, and then it's like, oh, Iggy doesn't want you to introduce him. He's got someone else to introduce him tonight. And I'm like, oh, okay, weird. And then brought out like some actor to introduce him. And then after the show, I had like my not my newborn, he was like a few months old at this point, like maybe close to a year old kid in my arms, and tried to get a photo with Iggy. And I have that photo upstairs. He is so fucking pissed off in that photo. He thought I was like, he's like, you piece of shit. Like, I can't believe you're asking me for this fucking photo. My kid's about to cry, and Iggy looks like he's about to cry in the photo. So I had my one magical night, and my one bummer night with him.
Who's the baby?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I want to get it as a t-shirt because I'm just smiling in the middle so big.
Yeah.
I'm just like so happy.
Oh.
Well, I don't want to keep you guys forever because I'm sure you guys got a lot to do tonight on your day off because laundry or something.
Well, wherever we're at, the sun is going down.
I think you're breaking up.
Damian.
Okay, we're coming back. You came back. Okay, good. Yeah.
You know what? It's always a pleasure to talk to you. It's just like sitting down talking to old friends, and we love it. And we can anytime you want, we'll always be here for you.
Well, I love both of you so much individually and now collectively. I can't think of a better pairing. And yeah, anytime you guys want to come back individually or together. Oh, look at that. Yeah, love to
First time
see
I've
you
ever
guys.
touched him.
You guys are allowed to. It's like the Nick Cave rule is out the window now.
There we go. There we go.
All right, love you guys. Stay safe out there.
All right. Stay
Thank
safe.
you. Thank you. Take care.
There we go. Yeah, buddy.
Wow.
Yeah. They had a little bit of reception issues.
Yeah, but it was worth it. It was worth getting through it.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
Yeah, he's like I don't know, Poison Idea, like one of the most interesting bands of all time for me. There's two bands that I collect actively, like if I just see records by them that I don't have, and there's a few bands like that, but the Hard-Ons and Poison Idea are just bands that I have like dozens of records by because incredible undefeated discographies.
Well, the Hard-Ons are like extremely prolific, right? Like they have so many records.
Yeah, I think I actually have my Hard-Ons collection like right here. Let me see how easy it is to get out. Let me see how easy it is to get out my Hard-On. This is like one of the podcasts you
got
like
way
now.
cooler than I thought it would be.
Yeah, this is like one of the podcasts you like now. Actually, if I'm not, I might not show one of these covers, or it might really be like one of those podcasts. Okay, yeah, I got them. Okay. All right. Surfing on My Face, the original first press.
Wow. What's that? 884?
85, I think, actually. I'm glad we spared me doing this right. 86.
Okay.
I think if my glasses aren't deceiving me. No, maybe 85. 85.
Okay.
Busted. And then I got Hard-Ons. The Satanist Pinball, I think the 7 is called. What song is this? Just Being With You. Oh, this, I think, is the single with Jerry on it, maybe? No, maybe I'm wrong on that.
So is Skeen a like a lost and found like label? No? Okay.
No. And it's like, dude, it is the most fascinating fucking label of all time. There was something I wanted to ask you about, but I think I got to the root of it, and I think it's just like a weird Discogs era, but it did lead me to like another weird discovery about it. So Skeen Records was this label launched by this guy, Jeff Spiegel. I wish I had that record over here. But it's a label that originally he's from Connecticut, and he puts out that Better Something Connecticut compilation. It's got like Big Gulp on it and Freedom of Choice and that kind of like late era Connecticut comp.
Okay.
I'm gonna look it up. This is what some people have to deal with this on the show from time to time.
What is it? Skeen?
Yeah, but it's like this one doesn't show up on their Discogs for some reason, this compilation. Oh, fuck, okay. I'll find it. Anyway, I'll look for that in a second. But if you come over to like their Discogs page, you'll see like this Caution 7-inch they put out, Skeen Records #2. It's after, I guess, he moves to Minnesota. And this is like an early record, like by Crimpshrine, 88. It's like one of the first Crimpshrine 7-inches. This band, A Priori, came out of another band that I'm trying to blank it on the name of now, that Andrew Reich was in, my friend who did the Born Innocent documentary, right? Like he was in this pre-band, their New Jersey band. And then this band, Boneyard, I clicked on today, and Gail Greenwood from Belly, and she was in L7 and currently in Gang of Four, was in this band Boneyard that's on the Skeen Records compilation. Then the next thing they put out is this the first compilation they put out has Forced Reality on it, which is Elgin James's band, and Jocko Wilkes was one of their roadies. That Marine guy that's on the Joe Rogan podcast from time to time or whatever.
Yeah.
And Jesse from Blatz was their manager for a minute. And then they puts out like this Walt Mink band, and the drummer from Walt Mink, what's his name? Sorry, I'm finding 1 second. Oh, Joey Warnocker. So Joey Warnocker's sister is Anna Warnocker from the band That Dog, who's married to Stephen McDonald.
Yeah.
Subject to the movie Born Innocent, right? So that's a weird connection between them that they don't even know about, I don't think. Joey's dad was the head of Warner Brothers Records, but Joey's grandfather, Simon Warnocker, was the basis of the chipmunk Simon from Alvin and the Chipmunks,
which had the Chipmunks Go Punk record.
I didn't even think about that, Woj, till now. Holy fuck. That's crazy. But anyway, Joey Warnocker also went after Jack Black's band at not even a battle of the bands, a house party show, and blew them off the stage so bad that it made Jack Black stop doing music and get into comedy.
Wow.
Jack Black brought it up on the show, and I had no idea who this guy Joey Warnocker was at the time, but he's like, yeah, man. He like brings him up by name on the podcast, and then I'm like, look it up years later, and like, lo and behold, he's on fucking Skeen Records. But Woj, I'm not done. Then Go is on with Bad Trip. They're split 7-inch. Fuel, really? Yeah. Fuel is on here too. Like the band that kind of invents that like gruff vocal, hot water music-y, Against Me kind of punky sounding stuff.
From the Bay, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Then Trenchmouth is on here, Fred Armisen's band. Most of their releases are on here. At which point they do a split release with Discord Records when they put out a Circus Lupus Trenchmouth split.
Yeah.
And then where are they? That was weird. This is like incomplete. Sticks and Stones is also on here. Great New Jersey band that I love. But somewhere there's like another Skeen Records. It's got like a couple other records on here that have like weird other connections to their bands. But I'm now being
the straight edge band Awake, right? I'm seeing
Awake. Yeah. Oh yeah, and here's where it gets crazy. So my copy of the Awake 7-inch says, Jeff Spiegel, I will rip out your neck, you sinner, or I will wring your neck, you sinner. Right, written on the dust sleeve, and it's numbered, and it's one of these ones that's listed on here on like magenta or red vinyl. And this is technically the first ever release by Victory Records. And I guess the deal was that Tony Victory paid him a certain amount of money to, and I guess like also weirdly Malcolm's record label, which I brought up to Ray Cappo a bunch, Malcolm Tent's record label, TPOS, also helped put out this record. This record, being the first record Victory put out, my copy has a letter on Victory Stationery shit-talking the dude from Skeen, from Tony Victory, saying, like, this guy fucking sucks, but I'm going to do Victory Records from now on. Check it out. I just signed this new band, Integrity. They're amazing. There's a straight-edge band from Cleveland. And then has a bio sheet for Integrity that he included in the 7-inch and signed it at the bottom of the 7-inch and, like, had written, like, Jeff, I'm going to rip out your neck, you sinner, on the dust sleeve of this record. But then even crazier is Trevor, the bass player of Awake, is the guy who ran music at Noisy.
Really?
Yeah, and managed like Sick of It All and stuff. Worked at Nasty Little Man for years, too.
Huh.
Still around. Super nice dude. But
yeah, I'm looking at his. What did he manage, or did he play in Andrew WK as well?
I think he managed Andrew WK
Okay.
at some point. But he was doing PR too for a lot of stuff. Where he actually is like kind of like a protege of Steve Martin, who was in Agnostic Front, also in the FUs, but also was on that compilation of Boston hip hop, which marked the first appearance of blanking on his name,
Slick Rick.
Slick Rick the Ruler.
Yeah.
Yeah. How crazy is that?
I got that recently, that record, I think.
He's played, his guitar part on that, like, was it Girls of Boston or something? I think it's called.
This is crazy. So Awake had a member that went on, that was in, remember that band Clairmel?
Oh, yeah. On No Idea, maybe?
Yeah.
Weird.
That's pretty weird, right?
Damn. Yeah, like Skeen Records, I kind of want to make a video about, because like you can kind of connect like Joe Rogan to Green Day through this record label, and Craig from the Hold Steady, his first band was also on this label too, on Skeen.
Yeah, it's weird. I've seen a bunch of these records before, but I've obviously seen the Awake record, but I don't know. I never really gave it any thought.
The Awake record, I found that crazy copy in a dollar bin in Portland, like a couple tours ago.
Yeah, like that. I mean, I don't think anything's a dollar bin record anymore, but like, yeah, that was like a dollar bin record,
Yeah, and like I'm finding it with that stuff in there, it's one of my most prized records.
Yeah,
like,
that's amazing.
It's a historical artifact for me.
You know what you should do is you should try to sell that to that fucking guy, that kid.
Oh, I got a bunch of shit that I should probably sell to that kid if I don't know, maybe that'll help me get out of debt.
Yeah, man.
I should definitely.
That's your golden ticket.
Yeah, I have a bunch of Integrity stuff. I got like Dwid's Integrity jacket, the original like champion jacket that he embroidered Integrity on.
Shit.
I got like a bunch of 7 inches, and I got some acetates, and
this will make its way to him, and he'll come to you. I guarantee it.
I don't know. I'm sure he has tried to hit me up. It makes me nervous. I gotta sell some of this shit. So maybe that's. I don't know if I want to unload my Integrity collection though. That's like a pretty prized part of my record collection.
I do not have an Integrity collection, and I love Integrity, and for some reason I don't have anything.
Because I lucked out and got into it on the Integrity when people hated Integrity.
Yeah,
people hated Integrity up here for a while. It's funny how like much your local scene dictates what you liked back then or didn't like based on what records were being brought in or what influential people in the scene kind of said. And post One Life Crew riot in Toronto.
I feel like I wasn't really affected by that much. I didn't buy One Life Crew record for sure because of that wasn't gauche.
Yeah, Mike was an original hard F Ario on their website. Like he was like listed on their website because he was like one of the original One Life Crew boycott. I mean, Mike from Fucked Up when I say that.
Yeah.
And
it's a badge of honor.
A certain record store that will not be named definitely sold copies of it under the counter in Toronto, but for the most part, it was kind of verboten. And like, certainly everyone and then one night in Toronto, someone booked Prohibition 2000 at one venue to play and Nine Shocks Terror at another venue to play. And the guys from Prohibition 2000 came over to the Nine Shocks Terror show. Us not realizing that like Cleveland shit, like those guys were all kind of friends with each other.
Yeah.
Or like at least knew each other enough to kind of come say hi. They're playing in town. But like in Toronto, it was like, what the fuck? And Dom brought Prohibition 2000 to the show, and people were pissed at Dom for that for a little bit.
Yeah, big deal. I don't know.
And hardcore's so cool. Like, it's so like interesting the way it converges with everybody, and sometimes
it's crazy, man. I mean, the one thing going back to Ray Cappo, like kind of bringing, for some reason that made me think of this. Somebody told me recently that you know the Madball song that's like no longer you wear the crown, like no longer you wear the crown.
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
It's like, you know, hey, we're taking over the show now. Like, it's basically, you know, the gist of the song. Somebody told me recently that that's like about like kind of about Youth of Today, like about like the youth crew and like those guys, like time being over, and like it's like the beginning of like the, you know, DMS era of New York hardcore. And I kind of wonder, I don't know, like,
oh, that's interesting.
You know, like I've been told that like a lot of like New York guys like didn't, you know, they felt like Youth of Today kind of claimed New York and held that against them, or there was some kind of schism there, or friction. But I wonder if that's like fake news. You know what I mean? Because
it could be true, but it's also funny if it's not. It's just like one of those weird coincidences, because I would say, like, even though they're not from New York, like, who is the defining New York band from that era? It's like Youth of Today.
Yeah.
Becomes like the defining kind of like.
I mean, I don't know. Like,
I'd say Warzone, like, maybe just before, but Warzone feels like it was a little more unstable than Youth of Today for like 87 to 89.
But you wouldn't say Agnostic Front in those times?
I think not even before that, Agnostic Front. Like, Roger's in prison, right? Like, Freddie's right. You know, taking over for a second with a Madball 7-inch, or, you know, Roger's like, you know, there's like, they go metal a little bit, quote unquote. You know, like, I feel like they kind of have their wilderness period where they're still like the Kings of New York, because obviously it's fucking AF, but at the same time, like, I feel like if we're just talking about pure music influence and kind of like association with that era, at least for me as an outsider, I'm going Youth of Today.
When did Roger go to jail?
I don't know enough. 80, like around Cause for Alarm, right? Because that's why Pete Steele has to write the lyrics.
I never thought that was the reason, but maybe. Like, what year is the In Effect video? 91?
91.
90?
Yeah.
And like, you know,
he's out, right, at that point?
Yeah, and like AF are like,
but that's what I'm saying. Like,
pretty killer in that. Like,
yeah, they're amazing. That's one of the greatest. Like, his dancing in that is the greatest on stage dancing ever. Like, James Brown maybe beats it, and then it's like, you know, HR, James Brown, Ray Cap. No, I'd say his moves where he's like just like moving, like the groove he gets into, the style. Yeah, don't get me wrong, but that's 91, right? Like, Youth of Today's kind of over by that point.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's where Madball, I think, becomes, it's their time. And AF's back, obviously, as well. But, like, I feel like Madball kind of defines New York after that point. And
for sure. After that point, for sure. I just wonder how much of friction there really was, or if it's kind of like a.
Yeah. It also brings up, though, like, another thing where, because I think the reaction to New York getting harder like that and the violence is obviously ABC No Rio.
Yeah.
I think Gorilla Biscuits moving into Moondog, moving into Quicksand, I think is also kind of like Walter's post-hardcore years, like his Dinosaur Jr. kind of movement trajectory. Have you know that song "Gimme Indie Rock" by Lou Barlow on? I think it's got to be a Sebadoh. It's a Sebadoh song.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's incredible, but he's like talking about getting out of being into hardcore And there's like the lyrics are like, started smoking pot, started like my music a little bit slow. And then just starts like, like just talking about the bands he got into and how he got out of the punk rock stuff. It's like, I'm not going to do the lyrics justice trying to remember them right now. But it's basically like what happens with Walter too. I feel like he just like follows that as a handbook a little bit.
I'll say this:
Subconsciously.
I feel them.
Yeah. It happens. I think it happens. It's a natural life cycle of a hardcore kid. And that's the thing about it that makes this music so vital is because like eventually you're going to just be like, fuck, I'm bored and try and do something different or get into different shit and just kind of like maybe make music that's different and that'll become a different branch of the tree. And then there'll be like a new wave of kids that are like, fuck that. That's not hardcore. This is hardcore. Like, you know, Hatebreed was with Quicksand.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, one thing, when DeWitt was on another contemporary podcast soon after he was on yours, he said, he's like, hardcore is a mix of punk and metal. He's like, no one can dispute that. What do you think about that?
I think at its core, it is. The problem is at this point, there's a lot of dilution in the pool of what is hardcore. Like, I think there's like a generation of kids that grew up liking stuff that doesn't necessarily connect to punk in a way. So you could have hardcore kind of removed from punk. You don't necessarily need to be into punk anymore to be into hardcore. And like, even people like Al Burrill or Scott Vogel that are like, I fucking hate punk.
Yeah.
They were all into punk before they became hardcore kids. And it's just like,
Yeah.
that was the trajectory that you had to kind of go through, I think. You know, there's the odd mutation of like a person that was just in a hardcore, but it feels like punk was always the on-ramp. But now the on-ramp could be like Limp Bizkit.
Yeah, it could be anything. But I just wonder about the first handful of years of hardcore. And I feel like those bands wouldn't agree with that. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Yeah, like I think they like, but I think like what hardcore, like, yeah, because like metal was not, well, but, like they would have like looked at Black Sabbath as being metal potentially, right?
yeah, because like if you think about like Black Flag, like there's definitely Sabbath influence in Black Flag.
Yeah, like I don't think you can be after Sabbath without reacting to it on some
Yeah.
level. I guess like Stooges are almost contemporary to it. Like I feel like to me, punk is Stooges meets like Stooges meets MC5 meets Velvet Underground. So it's like the Velvet Underground kind of pretentious art school, hippy dippy, cool graphic design kind of world meets like wannabe rock star, wannabe political revolutionary meets weird legit freaks. Like
Yeah.
Stooges are like Iggy's a star and has that quality, but that's a true freak band, and like it sounds like strange when you hear like that stuff, and like you know, dude's dressed up as a Nazi on stage. It's like
Yeah.
not a chill vibe with them at all.
No.
And yeah, the Stooges are, and I feel like punk is all of that mixed together, and like that it's constantly like all of these things kind of pulling together, and so hardcore is, I guess, to me, a distillation of it. And I feel like Ray is reacting to punk when he's like, yeah, we were like hardcore. And like there's delineation to me and to him when he says that, right? But like, to me, yeah, I don't know, like metal, I feel like metal's almost an offshoot of punk too, in a way. Like, but not Sabbath, obviously, but like post New York Dolls it's like there's like this whole other shift to different things, and like you look at what's metal. I guess it depends what your definition of metal is.
Yeah, like I wonder if new wave of British heavy metal would exist without the Sex Pistols or without punk.
Yeah, like the guys, what's his name? Paul, this rest in peace from Iron Maiden, fucking hated punk.
Right.
But Lemmy loved punk. And I
Yeah.
feel like if you look at like where British punk came from, and it's like Dr. Feelgood, Hawkwind, Pink Fairies, like there's like then metal's kind of like coming from the same sort of space, new wave of British heavy metal. Like I feel like there's shared influences on that level between stuff, and then it's just the British metal dudes I think looked at punk kids as being too art schooly in some ways, but I don't know. I like it's interesting. Dwight I think is like someone I feel like Ray too, that's very studied in this music. So I'm always interested on their perspective.
And then one thing I wanted to bring up is I saw like a clip of Rollins, and he was like he's basically like, I took it as him kind of like maybe taking a jab at Jello Biafra, where he's like I could, if I was to get up on stage and preach about like El Salvador right now, he's like, it would be fake. Like, I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. He's like, I can only talk about my experience. He's like, that makes it the most authentic. He's like, if he's like, you could go to a woman to hear about women's rights. He's like, I'm not a woman. Like I'm not going to speak on that. Like, I'm going to tell you about in my head, in my world, or whatever he was saying. It just kind of made me think about, I mean, first of all, kind of like him and like Rollins and Cappo are kind of similar in a way.
Both guys have been on Joe Rogan's podcast. Like both of these guys are friends with Joe Rogan ostensibly, and friends with, like, in Rollins' case, Ian MacKaye, and in Ray's case, Zach De La Rocha.
Mm-hmm.
And like I feel like that's like kind of like those guys can kind of do that. Jello. I love Jello. Like known him for a very long time at this point. But like we were on a cruise, like tour, the Bruise Cruise one time, and he's like, I was talking to one of the people that works on this boat. They work for below minimum wage. And I'm like, no, I didn't even think to ask. And he's like, I think I'm going to do something about it. And I'm like, oh yeah. And then he had to do like a spoken word thing. He did a whole spoken word thing about how fucked over everyone on that ship was because of the way they structured their label policies on that ship. Like, like it was really cool. Like it was like mind blowing to see him kind of do it and put in the research that he did on that ship to kind of find out how everyone was paid. And I kind of met Jello after he was doing that, kind of like the peak of his spoken word tours.
Mm-hmm.
But my God, his spoken word tour is the reason we have weed legal in Canada. I can definitely make that argument. Like he did a track on that third record where everyone should grow more pot, or so, I forget what it's called. He always gets pissed off that I can't remember. But that record's, I think, a large part of the reason cannabis is now legalized in Canada. Going back to talking about Justin Trudeau, I won't get into it now, but it's I love Jello's spoken word stuff. But like I think once again, punk is Rollins, and it's also Ray Cappo, and it's also Jello, and it's also like Kathleen Hanna and Martine from Crudos. Like that's what I love about it, right? Like there's like it's a like Ray was like talking about like, oh yeah, there's a lot of gods in punk and holy texts and stuff, and I that Max Rock and Roll magazine was like one of those holy texts as a kid for me.
For sure. Yeah. And also, that's just I don't know that for sure he was talking about Jello. You know what I mean? That's just my mind
Yeah.
wandering with like who could he be talking about? He could just been making a blanket statement about how overly political punk was in the 80s. You know what I'm saying? Which is probably it was,
Could be going after Chomsky. He knew Chomsky did a split with Bad Religion and Chumbawamba and was taking a shot.
Maybe. I don't know. Maybe who knows? It was probably wasn't at anyone specific, but
yeah, like, and I've had like, Henry's someone that I've had a much more complicated relationship with, so I feel like maybe that's why I'm not maybe being as generous in my analysis.
I just brought it up just because it kind of reminded me of like where the conversation went with the nausea YDL thing, and where Ray's like, hey, I'm interested in the individual, and I think like, like it's hard to, look, this guy believes that there's a blue 6-armed god that, they're going to go and join up with after they die 3,000 times on Earth or whatever. Of course, he's not going to buy into the politics of the day.
Yeah, that's what I realized. Like at a certain point, like Ray's belief system is very different on a spiritual level from mine, and that's the difference between a spiritual kind of politic where you're like, oh, it's so much bigger than just the politic of the day, where I think a lot more about the politic of the moment. And like, it's this weird moment where, that could be the conversation and I could just argue with Ray about that. And he's a guy who's put in so much thought into this. Like, he's traveled around India multiple times learning from people, right? Like he's like really like put an effort on this journey he's been on. So like, I'm going to fucking convince him that I know more than him. Like, no, like, it's like, I want to talk to him about why he doesn't like the misguided 7-inch and call bullshit on that, which for some reason he didn't go for at all. But I think it's fucking insane that he doesn't like those misguided 7-inches.
I mean, he just said, yeah, I didn't think it was good, I mean,
he took shots on him, I think, on the Revelation podcast.
Oh, really? A
couple places where he brought them up specifically as being like, oh, there's no good. They were just no good. As like a band. I'm like, damn. Like, he really goes after them.
I mean, I get it though. I mean, because to us, the misguided 7-inch, it's an early 80s 7-inch that can fit in with the abused and urban waste and stuff like that. But when you were there, you're calling balls and strikes or whatever. You know what I mean? Like you're not mystified by it.
I think it also speaks to the divide that there was in the New York scene around then, where because he didn't know Thurston Moore played an even worse.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there was like, for as much as he was like, oh, I knew everything about New York hardcore, I was like a New York hardcore guy. I think there was like a different scene in New York that he probably just wasn't paying much heed to.
Yeah, maybe.
Like Thurston Moore talked about like a bunch of stuff. Like, I don't know, there's like so much more I wish I could talk to Ray about. Like, I was like, fuck, I hope I get him for like another interview, because there's just like another like 12 pages worth of questions I had for him.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think it's like sick that like Ray and Porcella like were deep into like Danger House, and stuff like that. Like, that's fucking cool, man.
Yeah, like there's a continuation, like kind of like what makes a hardcore kid. And I think hardcore kids, like to me, the original hardcore kids are the McDonald brothers, Stephen and Jeff. And it's like this idea that like you're kind of like digging and researching and putting together a piece of puzzle. Like you listen to like Pillsbury Hardcore has a song, right? Like, can I come over and see your record collection?
Mm-hmm.
And like Stiff Records is putting out collector editions of their 7-inches really early on. And Danger House, they're clearly aware of how cool these records look. And that's like a point of making them cool and, limited and just like, it's gone, and that's it. and you gotta find it, and like I don't know. I think that's like what makes a hardcore kid is like part of it's like record collecting and digging.
Yeah, I feel like Ian and Henry were kind of setting that standard in DC.
Yeah, you heard about Henry, right?
Yeah, yeah, with the museum or
The
whatever he's
competing
starting.
punk museum. The East and West Coast punk museum beef is heating up at the same time as the East and West Coast hip hop beef is heating up. It's wild. Like, it's going to get drawn in. There's going to be Joey Badass rapping at Henry Rollins's thing, and then there's going to be like all these TDE people rapping at,
Do you think there's schism there or what?
I'm not going to say I know there's schism, but I've definitely heard there's definitely been certain artifacts that were wanted to go one place that wound up in another collection, and I feel like that's what the battle's going to be over from now on, and I feel like I kind of feel like there could be a punk museum in every city in the world, because there is like sort of like a real rich punk history for not every city. It's an exaggeration, but like, man, you could do a Wilkes-Barre punk history museum.
No, you can't.
Yeah, you could. Title Fight is arguably one of the most significant bands from that era, right? And like, isn't Tiger's Jaw from there too?
Yeah.
And like, Ghost, Ghost Main?
No, he's not. He's not from. I don't
Not
even
Ghost
think...
Main. Not Ghost Main. Sorry. Fuck, he was on the podcast too. I can't believe I'm blanking. I'm like friends with him on Instagram too.
Wicca Face.
Wicca Face Springs Eternal. Wicca Face. Sorry everyone. Wicca Face from there too, being a huge influence on that whole emo trap thing. Plus Cold World. Plus Posse Numbers.
What would the articles be? What would be the things be?
The Posse Numbers riot would be a history of Posse Numbers, and then it just ends in the Posse Numbers riot.
One of the great things about Wilkes-Barre?
What's that?
And Posse Numbers Fest is that we have our own pressing of Break Down the Walls.
Oh, weird. Right. Wilkes-Barre, you got Posse Numbers press, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you get one?
I never had one, man. I think I might have had one and I sold it. I don't know. I really want one now, though.
You know what I realized? Hot tip on who's coming up on the show. In researching the Tim Singer episode, Tim Singer did the redesign for those reissues of the Youth of Day records.
Okay. I could see that.
Yeah, I could see it. It's funny because I was not a fan of those at the time, but now I'm nostalgic for them. And also Jill Heath has photos in them too.
Huh. Yeah, like at the time I didn't think they looked cool, but now, yeah, whatever,
Now they look cool. Like it's funny because like at the time I wanted exact replicas of the thing. And now that you get exact replicas of the thing all the time, I'm like, I kind of wish people were doing those weird redesigns of stuff.
Yeah, because nothing's cooler than the actual original, So like,
except, Doghouse did reissues of maybe it was the whatever. I'm trying to remember the Doghouse band that was the reissues were for. Anyway, like one of the Louisville kind of area bands, and Falling Forward, maybe that was it. And the cover was like a full bleed kind of sepia tone shot of like a bunch of kids singing along to the lead singer, and it was like super high res. And I was like, damn, that's like one of the best looking covers I've ever seen for a record.
All of the Louisville bands were very photogenic.
And they had good design too for all that initial record stuff too.
Yes.
Like, it's funny, like, you think about the way they designed those Ink and Dagger records, it's kind of cool. Like Inga Dagger the whole way through had good design, but even that initial record one had a kind of cool vibe to it. Both of them.
I mean, all that stuff was really slick and ahead of its time looking, you know.
Yeah.
And I think like other people were trying to do that, but it didn't. That stuff looked pro. Like it looked really good.
Yeah, it's funny. Big Wheel Recreation, I remember having good design too around that time.
That was a little afterward, though.
A little
right?
after,
Like,
you're right.
Yeah.
Definitely. And then Amphetamine Reptile, I always thought had amazing record design.
Yeah, yeah.
For their kind of stuff. But man, we have talked for a very long time. And we're now no longer talking about Kurt or Ray. There's a fun one, Woj. I guess we'll do it again.
Yeah, same bat time, same bat channel.
Bye, everybody. Let me see how I can close this for everyone. And stop.